what you know about me.
Like I started out of necessity. So like I was at a sales job. I'm like, I'm tired of fucking sending out 1,000 emails and nobody responding. That's like real talk. I'm tired of doing that. I get 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 3 meetings, it's scattered. I have a good quarter, bad quarter. I'm like, yo, with my energy, I've got to be able to, if I meet you, we lit, we're good, we're tied in for life. So I'm like, how can I scale that, right? So I'm like, yo, let me just go on LinkedIn. Let me just, no rhyme, no reason, just pulled out my phone, no editing, no nothing, sis. It was just like, hey, what up? And we just talking shit. 2 months later, I'm going to get a chicken palm. People are like, yo, that's what's the name from this. And yo, I love your shit. I'm like, oh, nah. Is this what you want? I got you. And I just ditched everything. I ditched the shirt, the ties. I said, I'm gonna be this. And I'm gonna just show you who I am as a person. And then what blew up for me was the story. Like you said, telling it, I was like, yo, I was 20 years old. I had my first kid on the way. I'm working at BBQ smelling like ribs. I'm like, people screaming on I'm seeing it serving my peoples. And I'm like, I got my first child on the way. And I could have went to school and did it with my mama's way. So I'm feeling bad. I'm insecure. I'm like, did I make the right choice? Whatever the case may be. And I snuck into sales. I snuck into digital sales. And then from there, I just took off my career. But it was like me telling that story. I got people from Germany, all the other places, every other state. Man, I love your story. It resonates. I was the same way. Y'all worked at BBQs too. I still smell like ribs. I'm like, damn, bro. It was all types of shit. And that's, so if anybody listening, that's the power of telling your story. And I preach it all the time, right? Had you not had that, because you were writing, you were in something that you were passionate about. The problem was you weren't passionate about the content. You didn't have the creative control to say, you know what, this real shit happening where I'm from and stories that need to be told. But I got to tell you the pageant. So I'm going to hit you with the pageant. I'm going to show you what the pageant is. I'm going to show you what that is. But like, damn. And then you caught that bug. So like, what happened from there, sis? Like, so once you felt the bug, like things are starting to take off, like what did you do and how did you transition from education to really focusing full-time as being a creator?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey because I think with LinkedIn, I didn't really think it would be anything. 2020, we were on lockdown. There was just so much going on, the pandemic and then George Floyd's murder. I looked at LinkedIn more as an outlet, like a creative outlet, because I was just frustrated being at home, not really having any kind of camaraderie as far as anyone to even bounce these thoughts off in terms of what's going on around the country. Yeah. And it just started to propel me to be really honest about what was happening. And I think at that point, what had happened was I actually had started doing a podcast. I had been connecting with a few people on LinkedIn, and I had a higher education podcast, and that kind of empowered me. And then when I started speaking out about social justice and about George Floyd, initially I wanted to stop doing the podcast, and my podcast co-hosts at that time, they were like, why don't you double down? People starting to listen to you, and maybe you can use this and leverage your voice and become that voice of frustration. Maybe people will connect with that. So I actually just started to really go in harder on that message of what's going on around the country. This is not people. I think what was frustrating me as an educator and someone that teaches American literature as well as writing, people were saying this is not America. And I'm like, have you cracked open a history book? Like, this is America. This is one person that was murdered, and to minimize his murder, but this has happened thousands of times. About 4,000 plus people, men, women, and children were lynched between Reconstruction and the last documented lynching, which was Emmett Till in 1955 at the age of 14. So we know that this is not isolated. We know that George Floyd was a man that was murdered in front of our eyes on camera, but that it happened many, many times. People would take photographs. People would peel off skin of men and women that were lynched. They would make soap out of their bodies. They would burn their bodies. So, and I hate to be graphic about it, but the reality is that this is not something that his neck was kneeled on and he was murdered, but have been killed in very graphic and horrific ways throughout history, throughout time, and in ways that are almost too horrific to imagine. And I didn't want to gloss that over. I was feeling really angry that people, as a professor, I'm like, have people ever taken an African-American history class? I was kind of getting mad from the educational standpoint. And that's really what propelled me to start writing and really posting about Black history and culture and African history and culture. Because Black history, even though me as an immigrant, I am not American descendant of slavery here in the United States. Obviously, Black folk anywhere in the Western Hemisphere were enslaved, whether it's Brazil, South America, Caribbean, which is where my family is from. Anywhere one that's a black side of the world in the Western Hemisphere, we all originate from Africa. All life originated in Africa. So at some point, I really wanted to help people understand that history and not a good understanding of history is really why people were so confused about what happened with George Floyd.
Exactly.
And I made it my mission. For 2 years straight, I posted every single day without fail about Black history, about Black culture, about just the history of the United States. And I started with MLK, and I started with Rosa Parks, starting with Africa and our legacy of greatness. And I wanted to make sure people understood that. And people just started saying, wow, you're educating so much. And with my background in education, that's why I wanted to start Black History and Culture Academy. Black History and Culture Academy I actually launched on the day of the Capitol riot, which was January 6th. And I was just like, I had been building it, and I was going to launch it for Black History Month. And I said, you know what? Let me launch this now. I think I started with 40 classes. I was going to go to 50. I built the other 50 before Black History Month because I was like, no, we're going to launch this today because we literally just saw the government under attack. And people are acting like business as usual. We need to make sure that people understand. And then the pushback against CRT and the idea that Black history makes, children feel guilty. And I'm like, I grew up in UK. We learned about the Holocaust. We learned about World War II. And nobody said, let's not teach them about the bombing and how people had to be in these bomb shelters because people are going to feel guilty. They teach us because it's a part of history. And if Londoners and people up in is something that's very taught because you have to know that this is something that happened so that it won't happen again, right? So that was a part of what started to propel me to be a creator and start to think about how do I use my ability as an instructor, a college professor, someone that's very well versed in education, someone that is a writer that just really didn't write, but am a writer. How do I use this in a way that is meaningful, is measurable, is impactful, is for the culture? And I wanted to just think about my responsibility. I always think about myself as someone that I was like the kid that got teased in school, but if anybody else was getting teased on the bus, I start cracking on the person that was teasing that person, because I was just like, it's not fair. Like, why do people not stick up for each other? Why do people not, just treat each other like they want to be treated? And I'm always like a big person on someone that's really big on the golden rule, this idea that if people would just be human beings, we wouldn't need DEI, we wouldn't need all these different CRT and Black history and talking about intersectionality and a lot of concepts that really are beyond people. Sometimes these concepts people can't understand, but can you understand treat people how you would want to be treated? Or can you understand the hood rule, which is keep your hands to yourself? If you don't want anybody to do anything to you, keep your hands to yourself. It's just like basic human courtesy. So I just started really doubling down on the idea of let me educate people, and just Top Voices in Education happened. And then the New York Times article happened where they highlighted people on LinkedIn, Black folk that were educating and speaking out about social justice. So I think it just became almost like a snowball effect. I didn't expect it to be that. And a lot of people just try to discourage me and tell me, don't do this. You're going to put a target on your back. But I had been at my job at that point for maybe 7 years. So it really wasn't like that. I wasn't thinking about, well, I'm going to lose my job. And at that time, I actually started to sit down and say, well, if I do lose my job, what is my plan B? Because I was prepared that if that did happen or there was some repercussions that I would be prepared and make sure I had savings, make sure I had my ducks in a row in case that did happen. But it didn't. I got really more backlash from people that were threatening, like, saying, stop talking to people on social media that were being threatening. It really wasn't people that I knew. It was trolling and people that were like, stop talking about this, and people in, emailing my job and people in my DMs. It really wasn't, I didn't really have backlash in terms of professional opportunity. I attracted a lot more professional opportunity when it came to Ebony reaching out to ask me, did I want to do a podcast, or opportunities to go in and do speaking engagements and consult and coach and all these other things I never would have dreamed that I would be able to do. But I think initially my goal was really just to be what I've always been, which is an educator, a teacher, a storyteller. And that just really ballooned into everything that has happened as of now.
Sis, your story is amazing. And there's so many things